Killers of the Flower Moon, the movie that couldn't have felt longer if I was enduring bamboo torture while passing a kidney stone. I'm surprised Robert De Niro didn't die of old age during the filming, because I almost did while watching it.
It's real complicated. Sometimes you gotta do one thing even though you mean to do another thing. But I'm not in any kind of trouble at all. None at all.
Killers of the Flower Moon is the best movie of the year.
Your favorite Eldritch Horror here, taking a break from my work as a writer to bring you another review. Right off the bat, we are introduced to the native people, who are the subject of the movie. We are told they are given the worst plot of land imaginable, and yet struck fortune, for this land was rich with oil. Fast forward, and their tribe is enormously wealthy, and my father always told me, son, marry a woman with a rich father. But better yet, a rich woman prone to debilitating illness. So it becomes the meta strategy for the local whites to marry into the native tribe to gain access to their money. Prone to illness is an understatement when a wild rash of sudden deaths break out among the community. No joke, this movie at times feels like an endless parade of one Native American funeral after another. At one point, it seemed to even interrupt a conversation between two characters just to jump to a group of crying women around a bed with a corpse in it. By the end of the movie, the funerals had absolutely no emotional effect. DiCaprio was a weird type of character. He had just returned from World War I and staying with his uncle De Niro. De Niro is obviously evil from the start, even instructing people to call him king. Not very subtle, buddy. We go on to see lots of shady dealings, armed robberies, and murders, even some Masonic Illuminati stuff. It seems the wealth of the tribe has attracted these criminals. De Niro encourages the marriage of his nephew to a native woman. They describe her as being full-blooded. I guess this means she has a greater share of the oil money than the average tribal member. The movie drags on like a club-footed laboratory experiment until the FBI show up in town. They don't have the recognition they have today, as they were still a new organization at the time, and they weren't yet corrupt and incompetent to their core. The FBI agents really picked up the movie, as they introduced some lighthearted dialogue and comedy to the string of funerals. The scenes of them investigating the situation and meeting with people throughout the town was the highlight of the movie. As they conclude their investigation, they begin making arrests. De Niro attempts to close loose ends by killing most of his lackeys, but DiCaprio gets arrested and he is more than a few cards short of a full deck, so quickly breaks under pressure. De Niro's lawyer is the one and only Brendan Fraser, so imagine my shock when he is giving some of the most awkward dialogue I've ever heard. What a waste of a great actor. It almost seemed like he was stuck in a different timeline. DiCaprio goes on to testify against De Niro, and everyone goes to jail. Finally, we are taken to a stage where a 1950s play is performing, as if everything we had just witnessed was the show they just put on. A creative touch, but at this point I was entirely checked out. The film was just too long. It could have been at least 1 hour shorter, and probably would have been much more watchable. And I don't know where the hell a $200 million budget goes these days, but I certainly couldn't see it. I give Killers of the Flower Moon an 11 out of 21. 4 out of 7 sacrifice cultists. I didn't find any part of the movie particularly creative. The aesthetics were a stereotypical 1950s period set piece, and the cinematography was entirely standard, almost to a boring degree, like I could predict every angle of every shot. 4 out of 7 screams of the damned. The characters lacked nuance, and after the 5th funeral, there was no chance of further emotional impact. Characters never felt like they meant anything, and the acting was muted at best. I mean, really, this movie has a lot of scenes of actors sitting in silence. 3 out of 7 Tentacles of Cthulhu. There was minimal engagement. I never felt drawn into the story, and even at times had to focus to pay attention. When I start getting distracted by the walls of the theater, you know the movie has goofed up real bad. The plot could have been interesting, and it was obviously made with love by Martin, but the way it was delivered left much to be desired. And finally, the writing. What can I say other than out of place? I occasionally had to remind myself that it was the 1950s because the dialogue was so strange, and this was only further hammered home during the absurd scenes with Brendan Fraser. In conclusion, give this movie a miss, unless you are trapped in some kind of purgatory where you need to waste a significant portion of a human lifetime, in which case this endless movie will suit you well. That's all for today, mortals. Until next time.